India, a country with a rich civilizational history, which incorporates a wide variety of diverse peoples and cultures. For long a controlled economy, India is now liberalizing and opening its doors to foreign investment. At the same time, it is charting out a new course based on its skills in the information technology sector. India today is an acknowledged player in the international software stakes, providing not only the base, but also the manpower for the global software marketplace. South Africa, a diverse land with a multitude of cultures, traditions, and races, emerging after decades of darkness into a new era of democracy to claim its rightful place in the world. A country with the first world infrastructure, South Africa too is an economy in transition, from being reliant on commodities like gold to more manufactured and value-added goods. For several decades during the dark years of apartheid, the two countries remained distant from each other. Then, a new dawn broke, and since then, both countries have worked closely to once again renew their historic bonds. These are the bonds that herald the onset of a glorious future. South Africa's wine route is a must-see on every tourist itinerary. All over the Western Cape, the visitor can see lush vineyards and classic Cape Dutch architecture, and the opportunity to taste the famous wines in this magnificent setting draws large numbers of visitors all round the year. Equally popular is the wildlife of South Africa, which is showcased through the game reserves and the national parks, and which draws tourists from all around the world. For decades, because of apartheid, this land was closed to many outsiders, including Indians. With the democratic transition in 1994, South Africa began attracting visitors in large numbers. South Africa's natural beauty and its culture make it a popular destination for Indians too. For South African tourists too, India is a land of magical discovery. For many decades, India had closed its doors to South Africans. But in recent years, more and more South Africans have been coming to India to see the wonders of this ancient civilization for themselves. Some visitors have more than just sightseeing on their minds. One such is the flamboyant Indian tycoon Vijay Mallya. He saw South Africa as a country of tremendous business opportunities. The UB Group first bought out Mabula Lodge, a game reserve on the outskirts of Pretoria. With its vast range of wildlife, Mabula is among the boutique lodges that dot the country and has made a name for itself at the high end. UB also invested in the prominent South African National Sorghum Brewery, which makes the popular sorghum beer, a traditional drink for many South Africans. In less than 5 years, the new company, christened the United National Breweries, has created several brands which have gone down well with the mass market. The UB Group is not the only prominent Indian business house that has made a foray into South Africa in recent years. The opening up of South Africa has drawn other prominent Indian players too. Among them is the House of Tatars, who have been in Africa for many years and for whom South Africa was the natural choice as the regional headquarters for their businesses.
To give you a little bit of background about Tata's operations in Africa, he started about 20 years back. And one of the decisions which made us come into Africa was that most of these economies were breaking the shackles of foreign rule. And when South Africa became free, we felt that if we are not existing in South Africa, we will not be able to do business in other countries, neighboring countries in Africa, because the dominant role will be played by South Africa, which is the largest economy in Africa. And that's why we took a conscious decision at that time to have our corporate setup move to South Africa.
The Tatars assemble vehicles in the country which have found acceptance among South Africans, and they are looking at other, newer areas of investment like information technology. India's growing prowess in the information technology sector has attracted the attention of South Africa, which wants to harness Indian skills to develop its own software capabilities. Several companies on both sides have joined hands, and the South African government has indicated that it will draw upon Indian expertise to boost its own IT training and skills. Clearly, economic ties between the two countries have come a long way since the mid-19th century, when Indian merchants landed on the shores of Natal to sell their wares to local Africans. They soon set up shop and prospered. And by the end of the 1940s, when diplomatic ties were cut off, nearly 5% of India's external trade was with South Africa. Though India had imposed trade sanctions during the Apartheid years, Indian goods, especially spices and commodities, continued landing in South Africa, often through other ports.
In all these years that we were here, we always bought spices, we always had stocks. There was never a time when the Indian community here was deprived of spices. We always had spices for them. How to bring it, we won't know.
During the prolonged hiatus of nearly 5 decades, the two economies grew in different directions. South Africa's apartheid economy was based on cheap labor, which was used for exploitation of vast amounts of mineral resources available in the country. However, while South Africa exported precious metals and commodities, it also developed its own industry. Faced with economic sanctions, South Africa invested heavily in creating infrastructure and became self-sufficient in areas like power generation. Agriculture was the mainstay of the Indian economy for a long time. But in the last 5 decades, it has become self-sufficient in several industrial sectors and is now a rapidly growing economy. It now also has a thriving service sector, especially in the field of information technology. What is more, India has opened its doors to foreign investment in almost all areas and liberalized its trade regime. Business is proving to be a driver of the rapidly developing bilateral relationship between India and South Africa. From the small-scale sector to big business, both countries are discovering that there are a wide range of possibilities for economic cooperation between them and synergies that can and should be exploited.
The reason South Africa is becoming strong in mining technology is also because of its ability to set up integrated control systems using IT. But where we are nowhere near as strong as India would be the development of more general software, processing, etc. So a partnership can grow. Our strength in systems integration for mining and engineering projects and project development could be complemented with India's much more general strength in IT and software development. So these partnerships can be very, very strong indeed, because we can then take that platform and trade with the rest of the world.
South Africa has a lot to offer to India too. One such area where South Africa has developed several decades of experience and expertise is mining. Many of the world's biggest mining companies are based in South Africa. Among them, De Beers, a gigantic conglomerate which has an old relationship with India. India is a vital link in the diamond processing chain. The glittering diamond begins its journey as a humble piece of rough earth, mined in Africa and elsewhere. These are marketed by the London-based arm of De Beers, the central sales organization, where Indians are among the leading site holders and get the pick of the pieces. The rough diamond's next destination is India, where they are finely cut by skilled young craftsmen in the back streets of Mumbai and Surat. As well as in new high-tech factories, before they become part of exquisite jewelry and are displayed in the fashion capitals of the world. At the beginning of the 1990s, De Beers decided to take this relationship to another level. As India's policies on mining changed, the company came in and bid for mining rights to prospect for diamonds in different parts of India.
India is potentially prospective for new diamond deposits. De Beers had been interested in prospecting in India for some time, but for various policy reasons wasn't able to operate there. And in 1992 we started building up relationships in India with government people, with a view to trying to find a way to start prospecting activities in India. Over the last couple of years, the central government has changed its mineral legislation, and what we're seeing now is that foreign companies are going to be allowed to prospect in their own right, and then on discovery actually mine deposits, either themselves or in joint venture perhaps with other Indian agencies as well. So we've seen a progression, a change in the policy direction of government over the years, which I think makes India more favourable, well, makes foreign companies more favourably inclined towards investment in India.
De Beers' investments in India will depend on the success of the prospecting and could go up to hundreds of millions of dollars if good deposits are found. The company is confident that it will do well in India, given this country's rich history of diamonds. This aspect of the economic ties is only likely to grow in the coming years. Another area of business where South African products have made a foray into India is the defense sector. South Africa's defense industry has provided ammunition, electronics, and other items to India, consolidating the relationship even further. During the Kargil War, South African-made shells were used for 155mm guns, which played such a decisive role in military operations. But this aspect of the partnership is not limited to buying and selling of arms and equipment. It has a strategic dimension, which is driven by a shared worldview and common perceptions.
By way of contributing to world peace, it was quite clear to us that if we were going to make a contribution in that regard, participating in programs of the United Nations and so on, that a reliable partner from whom we could Ghana experienced, because we hadn't been part of the world in this regard, was going to be India. Setting up joint training programs, seeking advice of a partner that could be relied upon, given the history of relations and so on. And so we determined that we should shape solid, reliable relations between ourselves and India on the defense side of things, including exchange of technology, trade in defense equipment, and so on. The thing that I'm very excited about in our relations with India is that we are now working on putting up joint ventures and joint research. This, I think, holds a tremendous potential for both of ourselves.
Since its return to the international arena, South Africa has enthusiastically chosen to participate in multilateral forums, like the Commonwealth Heads of Government meetings, where India has been an important member for many years. South Africa is the largest economy on the African continent and an important member of SADC, or Southern Africa Development Council, a grouping that works together on a host of regional issues. India, which is emerging as one of the biggest economies in the world, is a key player in several regional and international multilateral bodies, like the Non-Aligned Movement. And both are founder members of the Indian Ocean Rim, which links countries which border the majestic Indian Ocean. The IOR promises to integrate several economies, many of them at similar stages of development.
There was obviously a historical bond in the region, at least between some of the IOR countries. At the same time, it was sensed that due to lack of information and networking, a huge opportunity of trade and over time inter-country investment was being missed. Also, there were 3 countries out in the arc who could serve as anchors, large countries: Western Australia, South Africa, India. If networking and trade linkages can be created, you're talking about a massive body of trade and investment potential in the 21st century.
There is a strategic dimension to the relationship too, and South Africa sees India as a key partner to jointly play a bigger role in world affairs. South Africa took part in the International Fleet Review held in Mumbai in early 2001, and both countries have already participated in joint naval exercises, and this will go a long way in efforts to maintain peace in key regions like the Indian Ocean.
If there was to be any strategic proposals on how to keep the Indian Ocean Rim peaceful, on how to guarantee the safety of trade and commerce in the Indian Ocean, that we would prioritize consultation as to the strategies of this with India, and then of course other related countries of the region.
Yet the relationship is not limited to matters economic or strategic. The cultural dimension is equally important too. For these African students from a township in Johannesburg, the words don't matter. The rhythm and beat of this Indian song is enough for them to dance, an example of the perfect harmony between the two peoples. These are the citizens of tomorrow. The end of apartheid brought about democracy in South Africa and has made its people genuinely free. But many problems remain, including unemployment and housing. And the South African government sees economic growth as a key to improving the quality of life of its citizens. Towards this goal, it hopes to link up with other economies like India, so that they contribute to not only their own, but also to each other's development.
India can play a very important role in the development of Africa at the same time as it develops its own economy. There's a difference in structure of our economies. The South African economy is very much a trading economy. We export something close to 30% of our GDP. So in that respect, it's a little different to the Indian economy, which is less of a trading economy. But the size of the Indian economy means that if economies like South Africa could link with it, if we could open our links more, then both could benefit. We, I think, have a range of products and capacities that would complement the Indian economy, and from India the same, as we're beginning to see. Now, if we can develop these links between ourselves, it will allow our economy to strengthen, which will help strengthen the sub-region in Africa, help strengthen Africa as a whole, and we'll get this crucial effect of economic integration between the developing countries.
This should not be difficult for two countries that have not only common values and common goals, but also a shared history going back a long time. From the early Indian settlers to the united struggle against discrimination and unjust laws, to jointly raising their voice against colonialism, and to the leaders who have come to exemplify great courage under all odds, whom both our peoples share, to the Indian community, which is a unique bridge between the two countries. It is a special bond indeed, a bond that is rooted in history and is poised for a harmonious future.